الله عنهم رجسا وطهرهم تطهيرا. أوصيكم عباد الله ونفسي بتقوى الله. In the first khutbah of the Friday prayers, I would like to begin by thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving the opportunity to the Shia worldwide to observe the Azab Sayyid al-Shuhada in Muharram and Safar relatively in a peaceful manner. The only sad part of that process is the attack which took place in Masqat in one of the Imam Bargahs. In Parachanar also the incident happened, but it was not really immediately connected to the Azab Sayyid al-Shuhada. It was more a land dispute which very quickly turned into sectarian conflict between Shias and Sunnis. But otherwise, the Azadari has been going on, and we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep over the Azadar, especially those who are going for the walk from Najaf to Karbala under his protection, so that this process can reach to its conclusion peacefully. One of the first victims of a conflict between Haqq and Batil, right and wrong, is actually the truth itself. And the unjust party would always try to justify its actions and demonize the victim and blame the victim for what happened. We see that even Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam during the beginning of his journey from Medina to Mecca and then towards Karbala, he wrote a written will. And this was not a normal wasiyat. This was a wasiyat written to his brother Muhammad Hanafiya, where he actually outlines the purpose of his mission. So that was not a will or a wasiyat that we would write normally, for ourselves, about our property and about family. This was actually a mission statement of Hussein ibn Ali, that why has he taken this stand against Yazid bin Muawiyah. And right there, Imam actually begins by negating any worldly motives to his mission. He knew that Muawiyah and Banu Umayyah, they have a system of propaganda where they will try to, give a very different color and motivation to the mission of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And so after the preamble, the very first statement that he has, he says, "Lam akhruj ashiran wala batiran wala mufsidan wala zalima." He starts with negation. He says, "I have neither risen against Yazid out of pride, nor out of insolence, neither as one who wants to create social disorder, nor as a tyrant who wants to deny the rights of others." And then he explains, what is my purpose? And the words he uses is very clear, where he says, إِنَّمَا خَرَجْتُ لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ فِي أُمَّةِ جَدِّي. The word innama in Arabic is used for exclusivity, only. He says, I have risen only to seek reformation in the community of my grandfather. That is the only purpose of Hussain ibn Ali, nothing else. And it's important to realize that he actually is talking about reforming the ummah. إنما خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي. He is not talking about reforming the deen. There is an attempt these days among some intellectuals to even change the values of Islam. The way Christianity has done. You look at the Protestant movement, in Europe against the Catholics. And this is where we have to realize that when Hussein ibn Ali talks about reformation, he is talking about reforming the people, not the deen. The deen is still there. It is the people who have deviated from Islam. They need to be brought back to the line to follow the true Islam. And how is he going to do that? He explains that in his second sentence where he says, إنما خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي. Then he says, أريد أن أعامر بالمعروف وأنهي عن المنكر. So the basis of his mission and his stand are these two important social principles that we have: al-amr bil ma'ruf and al-nahy anil munkar. And this is where we have to realize that the mission of Imam Hussein alayhi salam from very beginning, he clarified it that this is very clear. This is my intention. This is my plan. And what I'm doing is not a bid'ah, is not an innovation. وأريد أن أسير بسيرة جدي وأبي علي بن أبي طالب. And in doing this, he says, this is not an innovation, nothing new. I'm actually following the footsteps of my grandfather and my father Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. Salawat. And so this issue of trying to blame the victim was there in the early history of Islam and in many other societies, including the situation that we see now unfolding in the situation of Palestine. The Israeli Prime Minister was here a month ago, and in his speech at the US Congress, basically he did the same thing, because they take everything back to October. They don't want to talk about what was before it, what is the root problem, why all these things happen. And everything is basically blamed on the Palestinians themselves. And unfortunately, even they, since I'm in Chicago and had been not fully, but to some extent following the Democratic National Convention, even here, you see the Israeli narrative is very, in the forefront and very open. And when it comes to the issue of the Palestinian narrative, no floor was given to them. And this is where we see that, there is as if, the Palestinians don't exist, they don't have an identity, they don't have a civilization, they don't have a culture, they don't have a language. It's completely, blacked out. And this is where we look at it, the situation. All the conscious-minded people in the world from all different religions, and even those who are secularists, they are openly condemning the violence which is going on. 40,000 people have been killed. I was just reading an article, I think 3 weeks ago, where they were giving the estimate given by the Israeli sources themselves, that out of these 15,000 were militants. Let's take their number. It means out of 40,000, 15 were militants. What about other 25,000 people? These are the civilians, children, women and men, who have nothing to do with this conflict. If you can be so precise to go to a foreign country and target 2 individuals and not even destroy the building itself, where is your precise, targeting here? And how can you be, blind to the suffering of the, especially the children and the women, and the elderly who really are suffering? And there was no discussion about it at all. But we have to realize, in many majalis at the end, the khutbah end with this ayat from Surah Shu'ara, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلِبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ, which means that those who act unjustly shall soon know their final place when the times finally change. And that time will come very soon, inshallah. إن أحسن الحديث كتاب الله العزيز بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحليم الكريم غافر الذنب وقابل التوب وهو الغفور الرحيم ونشهد أن لا إله إلا هو العطوف للعباد بجوده والعواد على المذنبين بحلمه ونشهد أن محمدا نبيه وحبيبه سيد المرسلين والشفيع المذنبين ورحمة للعالمين وصلى الله عليه وعلى آله الطاهرين الداعين إلى سبيل الله بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة قادة الأمم وأولياء النعمة ومعدن الرحمة أوصيكم عباد الله بالتوبة ما سلف من ذنوبكم. This process of blaming the victim is nothing new. Look at the events of Karbala. We are in the week of Arba'een, and you will see especially those who are known to be from the Salafi or Wahhabi background. They use their full, power and efforts in order to deflect the blame away from Yazid. And actually they would like to put the blame on Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salatu wasalam himself. And on this issue, let me start with the statement of Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah, he's a scholar of the 7th century of the common Hijra calendar. And it's his ideas that the Wahhabis have taken up. The Wahhabis are Hanbali, but not directly. They don't go to Ahmad bin Hanbal directly. They go through Ibn Taymiyyah's lenses. Ibn Taymiyyah actually, he writes, and it's really amazing how they look at things. He says, فَيَزِيدْ لَمْ يَأْمُرْ بِقَتْلِ الْحُسَيْنِ. Yazid did not order the killing of Hussein. And then وَلَا حُمِلَ رَأْسُهُ بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ. And the head of Hussein was not, taken to him or presented to him. وَلَا نَكَتَ بِالْقَضِيبِ عَلَى ثَنَايَاهُ. And he did not, use his stick to hit on the blessed the teeth and the lips of Hussein ibn Ali. بل الذي جرى هذا منه هو عبيد الله بن زياد. So the blame is now deflected from Yazid to Ibn Ziyad. It was his doing, not the doing of Yazid. كما ثبت ذلك في صحيح البخاري. He refers to Sahih Bukhari. And then he says ولا طيف برأسه في الدنيا. Hussein's head was not, paraded around the cities. وَلَا سُبِيَ أَحَدٌ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْحُسَيْنِ. And no one from the family of Hussein were made captives or prisoners. So total denial of what had happened there. And here they are using Ibn Ziyad, as a source of the blame. The best comment to that would be from this century's writer from Egypt, Taha Hussein is a very famous, writer in 1930s, where he says that if really Ibn Ziyad was the problem and it was not Yazid himself, he says, why don't we see any rebuke from Yazid towards Ibn Ziyad? He was not demoted, he was not punished, he was not deprived of his privileges, nothing. So he says this game of trying to shift the blame from Yazid to Ibn Ziyad, doesn't make sense. Then we go to another scholar, even before Ibn Taymiyyah, by the name of Ibn al-Arabi. He's from Egypt. He's a faqih, a jurist. He's different from Ibn Arabi. There are two names. One is with Alif Lam. Ibn al-Arabi is the Egyptian jurist. Ibn Arabi is the so-called, Sufi master who lived in Muslim Spain. And Ibn al-Arabi actually says, ما قتل الحسين إلا بسيف جده. He says Hussein was not killed, but on the basis of the sword of his grandfather. They are saying that according to the Sharia of his grandfather, he should have been killed. Why? لأن بيعة يزيد قد سبقت والحسين باقى عليه. Because the Yazid's bay'at had come first and Hussein rebelled against him. And so he is saying, the Hussein was killed according to the laws of his own grandfather. He actually was influenced by someone even before him, the famous Imam Ghazali, who is known to be the very prominent Sufi spiritual master even in the West. His book Ihya al-Ulum is actually so popular that you have multiple translations of his book, which is a multi-volume work. Every generation comes and they hire very prominent professors, a team to come up with a better translation of the book. And in the Western world, spirituality and Sufism has become very popular, and that is the actual source that they go to. In that book, Ihya al-Ulum, Imam Ghazali actually has a discussion about, because it talks about spirituality, there is a whole section about akhlaq. And one of the issues in akhlaq and, character building is this concept of husn zan and su zan, that Muslims or mu'min should not be suspicious towards other mu'min. You should always give them, benefit of doubt if you have any suspicion. And he goes back to the ayat of Quran from Surah Al-Hujurat. The theme is okay. That as a mu'min, you have to refrain from suspicion about a fellow mu'min. When it comes to the example, what is the example he brings up? He says, for example, Yazid. He was a mu'min. And we are not sure he ordered the killing of Hussein. And therefore it is haram to have suspicious thoughts about Yazid. And you just think about it. He is a spiritual master. He couldn't find any other example. That he brings the example of Yazid. And so he's basically trying to use different, standards to basically, protect Yazid from this blame of being the murderer of Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salam. Actually, his motivation was something else. Because he also ends up saying, يَحْرُمُ عَلَى الْوَاعِظِ ذِكْرُ الْحُسَيْنِ وَأَصْحَابِهِ. He says it's haram for the orators and speakers to talk about Hussein and the ashab of Hussein. Why? لأنه يهيج أو يهيج على بغض الصحابة. Because when you talk about Hussein and the ashab of Hussein and the tragedy of Karbala, your feelings towards the Sahaba of the early days will be very negative. In order to stop that, he is saying, don't talk about Hussein ibn Ali. Don't talk about Karbala. And this is where we have to realize, this whole game of blaming the victim is a very old game. Even in the events of Karbala, we see the same things. Salawat Akbar. Not long ago, there was a TV program known as مع سماحة الشيخ, where the Mufti of Saudi Arabia, Sheikh Abdul Aziz Al Sheikh, was on the program responding to the questions. One of the questions was about Imam Hussain alayhi salam and Yazid. And I'll just give you the translation of that for the sake of the time, where he responds by saying, allegiance of Yazid bin Muawiyah was Shar'i, legitimate, according to the Sharia, which was taken at the time of his father Muawiyah, and the people had accepted it. But after Muawiyah died, Hussain ibn Ali withdrew his allegiance. Hussain, in his decision not to give allegiance, was wrong. Na'udhu billah. Because allegiance to Yazid was legitimate and was taken during his father's life, Muawiyah, and was witnessed by the people. By whatever Allah makes, whatever Allah makes destiny is in such that He is wise and all-knowing. And then at the end He says, but after all, we ask Allah to be happy with Hussein and request Allah for his forgiveness. La'natullah alayhi, I would say. And he's asking for forgiveness for Hussein ibn Ali. And this is the modern days, we are not talking about Ibn Taymiyyah and the people who came before him. And this is where we have to realize that when we recite this, the phrase in Ziyarat Waris, which we ended last night, فَلَعَنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً قَتَلَتْكَ وَلَعَنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً ظَلَمَتْكَ وَلَعَنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً سَمِيَتْ بِذَلِكَ فَرَضِيَتْ بِهِ. This is a current issue for us. It is not just history. It means those people who hear about the tragedy of Karbala and are pleased with what happened, they are included in this bad dua that we have been taught by our sixth Imam in Ziyarat Waris. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasten the appearance of the Imam so that we can have inshallah global and sustainable peace in the world. اللهم صل على سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وعلى إمام المتقين وأمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب صلوات الله عليه وعلى سيدة نساء العالمين سيدتنا فاطمة بنت رسول الله صلوات الله عليها وعلى سيد الشباب أهل الجنة الحسن المجتبى والحسين الشهيد بالكربلاء عليهم الصلاة والسلام. اللهم صل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي عليهم الصلاة والسلام. اللهم صل على مولانا الحجة بن الحسن صاحب العصر والزمان ما هي آثار البدء والطغيان هادم أبنية الشرك والنفاق حاسد فر البغي والشقاق صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آبائه الكرام ما اتصلت الليالي والأيام. اللهم عجل فرجه وسهل مخرجه واكحل ناظرنا بنظرة منا إليه واجعلنا من المستشهدين بين يديه. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يذكر فتنفعه الذكرى. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون.